Afternoon, and welcome to All About Steam, Episode 8, the GWR Castle class, or the 4073 class. The 4073 class, or Castle class, were 460 steam locomotives of the Great Western Railway built between 1923 and 1923 through 1950. They were designed by the railway's chief mechanical engineer, Charles Collett, for work on the company's express passenger trains. They could... Sorry if you guys could barely hear me. I forgot to do this. For the 4073 or Castle, I'm not going to read that if you heard me. For working the company's express passenger trains, they could reach speeds of up to 100 miles an hour, or for you British nerds, I'm sorry, 161 kilometers an hour. No, I should say metric nerds. There we go. The origins of this highly successful design date back to the Star class of 1907, which introduced a four-cylinder 460 layout with long-traveled valves and Belpaire firebox that was to become the characteristics of GWR express locomotives. The Star class was designed to take the top express trains on the GWR, with 61 in service by 1914. But after World War I, there was a need for an improved design. To meet this need, Chief Mechanical G.J. Churchwood had in mind an enlarged Star class, designed with a standard No. 7 boiler and fitted to his GWR 4700 class Express Freight 280. However, this combination would have taken the axle load over the 20-ton limit then set by the civil engineers, and in the end, nothing came out of the idea. C.B. Collett succeeded Churchwood as chief mechanical engineer of the GWR in 1922, and immediately set about meeting the need for a new locomotive design that would both supplement the stars and replace them on the heaviest expresses. Collett's solution was to take the basic layout of the Star, an extended frame, and a newly designed No. 8 boiler, which was both larger and lighter. The increased amount of steam that this produced, allowing an increase in the cylinder diameter from 15 inches by 26 inches, 381 millimeters by 660 millimeters, to a 16 inches by 26 inches, 406 millimeters by 660 millimeters. The extended frame allowed for a side window cab and an increased gray area. The result was an increase in tractive effort to 331,625 pounds, and a locomotive that looked attractive and well proportioned, while remaining within the 20-ton axle limit. Yeah, they are correct. Does look attractive. Unlike the Star class, there was no prototype. Collar was successfully confident on the design to place an order with Swindon Railway Works, Lot 224, for 10 locomotives in 1923. Although there was a 4-month delay between the appearance of the first example in August 1923 and the second in December to allow for correction of any teething problems. Thereafter, the remaining 8 locomotives came out at regular intervals up until April 1924. They were numbered 4073 through 4082, the number series continuing unbroken from the Star class. The 12 Star class locomotives, which were built in 1922 through 23, have been given the names of abbeys in the western area served by the GWR. The new locomotives were named after castles, also in the west, beginning with Caerphilly Castle. Over the 27 years from August 1923 to 1950, 155 castles were built new at Swindon Works, and a further 16 were converted from other classes. In February 1952, 2 engines, Winder 4082 Windsor Castle and 7013 Bristol Castle, swapped names and numbers. 7013 was disguised as 4082 to run George V's funeral train, and the numbers were never swapped back. 4082 was withdrawn from service in 1964 as 7013, and 7013 was withdrawn from service as 4082 in 1965. Now it's time for the cab tour of the GWR Castle. So right here we have the vacuum brake. Right here we have the regulator. Right here we have the reverser. Of course I have the firebox. I have the water scoop. Nope, handbrake. Then water scoop on this side. That doesn't work. We have some seats that fold up and down. Here's the blower. Of course we have the live steam injector for both fireman and engineer. I have the steam heat master cock. I have the cylinders. And the sander should be around here. Sander right down here. Right here we have the AWS recognition. Anyways. The new builds were as followed. Lot 224, numbers 40... Okay, I'm not going to go through this. This is too long. These locomotives were built with minimal changes to the dimensions. However, from 5013, Abergavenny Castle, there was an alternation to the shape of the front end casing of the inside cylinders from 5043 Earl of Mount. A combe was a shorter chimney was fitted. Those built before 1926 were fitted with a 3,500 imperial gallons, 16,000 liters, or 4,200 U.S. gallons, tender. But thereafter, 4,000 imperial gallons, or 18,000 liter, or 4,800 U.S. gallons became standard for the class. Between January and September 1924, the only Great Western 462, no 11, the Great Bear 111, was rebuilt into the member of the Castle class, although only the front portion used of the original frames and the number plates were used again, but probably little else. The new locomotive was named the Viscount Churchill and survived until withdrawal in July 1953. In April 1925, Star Class number 4009 Shooting Star was likewise rebuilt into a castle by extending the frames and fitting a new Castle class boiler and cab. It was renumbered to 100A1. Lloyd's was withdrawn in 1950. Okay, Shooting Star was withdrawn in 1950. In October 1925, a second star class, number 4016, the Somerset Light Infantry, Prince Albert's, was similarly converted into a castle class, although in this case it renamed its name and number. Two further conversions of stars were undertaken in 1926, number 4032, Queen of Alexandria, and 4037, the numbers South Wales borders, retaining their names and numbers surviving until 1951 and 1962, respectively. In November 1929, the prototype for the star class, number 4000, North Star, was rebuilt into a castle, being subsequently redrawn in 1957. Between 1937 and 1940, the further 10 members of the Abbey series of the star class, numbers 4063 through 72, were rebuilt as castles. They were located the new numbers 4083 through to 5092, but retained their original names and were withdrawn between 1958 and 1964. When introduced, they were hailed as Britain's most powerful passenger express locomotive. Being some 10% powerful than the stars, the first 4073 Carefree Castle made its debut at Paddington Station on the 23rd of August 1923. The choice of 4082 at Windsor Castle proved fortuitous as the locomotive was to haul the royal train when King George V, I think, and Queen Mary visited Swindon Works in 1924, and much publicity was gained when the King was invited to drive the engine back from the works to the station before the return journey, with the Queen and several high-ranking GWR officers also on the footplate. During 1924, 4073 Carefree Castle was exhibited at the BEE. We talked about this in the Flying Scotsman episode at Wembley, alongside Sir Nigel Gresley's Flying Scotsman. The Great Western declared their engine to be more powerful than its bigger LNER rival, and in terms of tractive effort alone, they were entitled to do so. As a result, GWR General Manager Sir Felix Pole proposed to LNER Southern Area General Manager Alexander Winston that a trial with the two types should take place via an exchange arrangement. This resulted in the These resulting trials commenced in April 1925 with 4079 Penedis Castle representing the GWR on the Great Northern Main Line and 4474 representing the LNER on Great Western Tracks. I actually think that was the Flying Scotsman, but on the first morning, Penedis Castle was to work a 480-ton king from King's Cross to Doncaster, and LNER officials fully expect the smaller light engine to encounter problems climbing the Holloway Bank. However, the railway rider Cecil J. Allen records that the GWR locomotive made a faster start from King's Cross to Finsbury Park than any LNER Pacific he had recorded up to that time. And over the trial, Penedis Castle kept well within the scheduled time and used less coal, considerably denting LNER pride. For the LNER, Victor Wilde was compared on the Cornish Riviera Express to 4074 Kildare Castle, and although it kept time the longer wheelbase, of the Pacific proved unsuited to the many curves of the route. Again, the GWR took the honors with Kildare Castle burning less fuel and always ahead of the time. This being illustrated on the last 2 days of the trial by gaining 15 minutes on schedule in both directions. Okay, we're gonna skip this part to the incidents. Oh wait, here's one. Okay. In 1946, Frederick Hawkesworth, Clark's successor, introduced the higher degree of superheat to the castle boiler, resulting in increased economy and water consumption. In 1956, the fitting of double chimneys to selected engines, combining with larger superheaters. Whoops. I wonder what happens if I was to... Combined with larger superheaters, further enhanced their capability for sustained high-speed performance. The fastest record speed of a Castle-class engine was 102 miles an hour, achieved by a 7018 Doleswyn Castle at Little Sumford on April 1958, while hauling the Bristolian in the up direction from Bristol to London. The non-stop run over 117.6 miles took 93 minutes and 50 seconds, average speed of more than 75 miles an hour. Between 1946 and 1948, 5 engines, 100A1, 5039, 5079, and 5083 and 5091 were converted to oil firing, but soon were restored to burn coal. 11 hulls are also temporarily converted. That's a cool fact. On the 30th of November 1948, a passenger train hauled by 5022 Wigmore Castle overran signals and was in a collision with locomotive 4150, which was running on its train at Lamport. 8 passengers were injured. On the 12th of November 1958, a freight train overran signals and derailed at Hawksworth Junction, Swindon, Wiltshire. Locomotive 5009, Salisbury Castle, was hauling a newspaper train which collided with the wreckage. The withdrawal of steam power started in the 1950s with the first 100A1 Lloyd's withdrawn from Old Oak Common in March 1950. The first new build castle, number 4091 Dumley Castle, was withdrawn from Old Oak Common in nearly 9 years, and later in 1958, the lowest mileage castle was the 580,356 miles run by a 7035 Ogmore Castle between... The last 3 castles to be withdrawn were all located to the Gloucester Shed, with 5042 Winchester Castle and 7022 Hereford Castle drawn in 1965. The last to be withdrawn was Clun Castle in December 1965, with worked the last steam train out of Paddington on the 27th of November 1965. Of the 8 castles to be preserved, 6 have been operated in preservation, 3 are purchased from BR for preservation, 4073, 4079, and 7029, with the remaining 5 being rescued from Barry's scrapyard. All of the engines that have operated have also been has also been out on the main line. Numbers 4079 Benedict Castle, 5029 Nunney Castle, 5043 Earl of Mount Acumby, 5051 Earl Burst, 5080 Defiant, and 7029 Clun Castle. 2 of the 8 preserved castles, numbers 5043 Earl of Mount Cumbay and 7029 Clun Castle, are fitted with double chimneys, while the remaining 6 are still fitted with the original single chimney. Hornby Railways manufactured a model of the 4073 and 00 gauge. The Hornby 00 brand, then owned by Meccano Ltd., also built Bristol Castle, released in 1957, for the 3-rail system, and Cardiff Castle for the 2-rail system 2 years later. Wren continued the Hornby 00 model when they took over the range, Airfix such DMR, later DAPL, also produced a 00 model. Trying released a TT model gauge model. Graham Farish, later Bachmann, released N-gauge models. Many different prototype examples have been depicted by the various manufacturers. And that, my friends, will conclude our episode for the castle.